Hi everyone, I'm Rob Watson. I'm the module leader for TECH1002, Social Media and Technology. And I'm going to just give you a brief overview of the key issues that we're going to cover in the lecture, the fifth lecture in our series of lectures. The topic for discussion this week is the idea, taking the ideas forward that we've covered in the last couple of weeks, which is kind of under the umbrella of the idea of mediation. What I want to do this week is I want to look at the idea of how the electronic and digital became part of contemporary media culture, and particularly in the way that it's been used for sampling, and particularly the way that it's been used for kind of electronic sampling, actually either through music and through visuals as well. So we've kind of looked at the way that media was used pop media was used in the 1960s as a way of kind of referencing itself. Here we're going to look at the way that music and art and culture became what's known as kind of postmodern, as a kind of way of it was not just a kind of case of referencing itself, but it kind of knowingly referenced itself, if that makes sense. So we'll tease some of these ideas out, and we'll do it by looking at a lot of examples. So the kind of things we're going to look at, we'll do this by looking at a kind of a particularly a band which is associated with a record label called ZTT, which is taken from a name for, I think it was a sound poem by the Futurists back in the early 20th century, so kind of 1910, that kind of that decade. And it was the idea of Zang Tum Tum, and it was taking this idea of very modernist, early modernist art, and about saying, well, actually now we're looking at this from a postmodern position. So we're recycling and we're reworking and we're quoting, but we're also doing something which is different, is that we're simulating what's known as the kind of hyper-reality of media. So the ideas that we'll cover will kind of give an overview, just kind of a brief. It's really to get discussion going, really. It's not kind of definitive in any sense, but it's right about asking questions about how we change representation, visual representation, media representation, from something which is, if you like, authentic to something which is simulated. And it's that idea that, you know, fakes, the world is defined and we put our faith in fakes is one of the ideas about this. So we'll cover that in the lecture. As ever, there's a set of notes that will come with the lecture, which are posted up on the wiki already. So you can access these and look at them, and you can read through them in advance. They've got links to the media that we'll be using in the lecture. The PowerPoint presentations, as ever, I don't share the PowerPoint presentations. There's a lot of copyright material that I use in the PowerPoint presentation. But all of the links to the material is contained in these notes, and it gives you the background reading. I also don't record the lecture because it just means stopping and starting, and I don't, we've got 50 minutes and I don't really want to spoil the flow. The reading for this week is which chapter is it? It's chapter 2 in the Jenkins, Ford and Green book. And the chapter's called Reappraising the Residual. And it's the idea that how do we look back on the legacy forms of media that we've inherited and we used, like cinema, like television, like radio. But now we're starting to look at this from a perspective of it being based around digital, networked, social, shared, participative-based media, which is remixed and modified and reworked, and which is part of a kind of process of re-engagement through active involvement, which is a different kind of way of thinking about media than previously. And Jenkins, Ford and Green go into this in the whole book in some detail, so it's well worth working through this over the coming weeks. As ever, bring your notebook and pen with you. Keep repeating this. You're going to be sick to death of me repeating this, but I really want to see that you're taking notes, even if it's drawing pictures of cats and kittens. I don't mind what you draw pictures of. It's a good way of kind of referencing different ideas and different concepts that don't automatically lend themselves to being presented in a kind of format like this, a textual format. Be visual about it. Multicoloured pens, lots of different types of drawing would be very useful. Maps, that kind of thing. Hopefully you're seeing the connection between how we approach information in the lecture series and the kind of activities that we're doing in the workshops, which are creative and open in terms of the way that it encourages to think. So yeah, there's a couple of programs that you can watch this week. There's one on the Boxer Broadcast website, or the Learning on Screen website, which is the story of pop, and it's particularly about sampling and how sampling was brought in through the 1980s. And then the other one, there's a really great program that was on the BBC iPlayer recently, which is with Vic Reeves, and it's about the Dadaist movement, which is that modernist, contemporary, turn of the 20th century creative burst of I don't know, how do you describe it? It was just a kind of crazy time for art in its way. But it's a really good program that presents some really good questions. So if you get a chance to watch that in advance, then that would be great. Again, that's available via the Boxer Broadcast, so you can watch that at any time. So yeah, have a great time. Hope to see you bright and early on Thursday morning.